Hello and good afternoon, and welcome to this video tutorial in which we're going to be covering some Tickle, or the tool command language, Tickle scripting that can make your job a whole lot easier when you're working with Cisco devices. And so as you can see here on my screen in front of you to the sort of right hand side, I'm using Sublime Text, which is sort of my text editor of choice. And there's a couple of reasons for that, and we'll touch on that as we work our way through. One of the reasons is as soon as I name the file .tcl, it actually knows what syntax it's to be looking for and can help you identify if you're maybe missing a closed quotes or something like that. So you can do Tickle scripting, though, if you have Notepad, any text editor, right? You could go ahead and do up a Tickle script. If you created a file in VI, on your Linux virtual machine, you can do Tickle script in that format as well, and then copy and paste things. And so we're going to walk through each of the steps here. And as a demonstration, we've already looked at Lab 7-3. So I'm going to show you how to save a whole bunch of time in setting the basic settings for labs, right? So when you come back into a lab, if you wanted to run that lab again, all you would have to do is run your Tickle scripts to set things up, and off you go. So it saves you a lot of the time, because for instance, when I'm doing Lab 7-3, I'm not actually coming in to practice how to assign an IP address to an interface and how to no-shut the interface. Those things I know, right? Or I'm not coming in to on the console line, set it so there's no timeout period, and then change the logging to synchronous. So what I'm doing is I'm coming in, I want to be working with BGP, because that's really the premise of the lab. So let's go ahead and take a look at this Tickle script. And again, I'm actually going to recreate both the ISP router base config as well as Santa Rosa 01. And so what we're looking at is Santa Rosa 02 right here. And this is what the assignment wanted us to set up the interfaces for at the default. So we'll start at the very beginning. I'm creating the script, and I'm actually going to cut and paste this script right onto the router. We're also going to look at creating, a nice, well-defined directory structure so that things are organized for you. Okay, and this puts command is just basically going to open up this file on the router for writing, and that's what that W+ means. And then I'm going to run some IOS commands. Now you'll notice I have IOS_config here, and then my command is inside double quotes. So if I was in global config mode, I would say line con 0, and then under line con 0 I would say no exec timeout and logging synchronous. And so you put the commands in the order in which you would actually execute them, even if you were to drop into a sub-configuration mode. And we're actually going to modify this script, and we're going to drop the EIGRP config in named mode with the IOS config command. So anything that starts with the pound signs, that's just simply a comment, right? So it's for me to document my script, and maybe I want to say up here at the top, router Santa Rosa. And this is one of the things I love about Sublime Text, is it actually figures out what it is you might be trying to type, and then once it kind of fills it in, you just hit enter, and then it fills it in for you. So router Santa Rosa 02 lab 7-3 initial configuration. And then I like to keep my comments at least one line away from my config text, that way it doesn't become confusing. So we go ahead and open the file for writing, and then it says set up common router settings. So the common router settings that I'm going to set across all of the routers I'm working with are going to be this line con 0, no exec timeout, logging synchronous. Because again, these are things that are going to help me when I'm doing my configuration. So now I'm going to come down, and the next section says configure hostname and interfaces for R7, which is the Santa Rosa 02, in the lab 7-3 scenario. And again, your commands may vary, right, if you're following the lab strictly, or if you have some equipment maybe at your house. Again, I say router 7 because that's how I have it configured via my access server, and that's what it shows up as here in my secure CRT window. So I'll reference it as router 7, even though in the lab they call it router 3, and it's San Jose. But I've been to San Jose a couple times, and I much prefer Santa Rosa to San Jose. All right, so here is what we're going to use is the Santa Rosa O2 router. And so what do I want to do right off the bat? So from global config, I set the host name to Santa Rosa O2. I'm going to configure the loopback IP address. And I know I don't need the no shut here, but as a habit, I always, even when I'm typing, I always type no shut just to make sure I bring the interfaces up. So I'll throw it in there as well. And then we're going to configure the serial 000 interface. And then we're going to configure the serial 010. Now on my router, it's 010. I've got an HWIC, what is it, CSU, HWIC 1T CSU or something like that in there. So it's in serial 010, not serial 001. So I've just made the change here. And again, this is where when you're setting your router up, make sure that you know the interfaces that you're connecting. And you'll see we have 2 lines here for serial 010. I could have placed all of this up on that first line, however, it would have run way over there. So I just decided to make it a little easier to read and broke it into 2 lines. So the loopback gets configured, both serial interfaces get configured, and then what do we want to do? I want to save my configuration, right? So you'll notice that this is a command that would be executed from privilege exec mode, right? So I don't precede that with the iOS underscore config. When you can precede the command with the iOS underscore config, that's a command that you would run from global config. And so that's the difference. We're also going to take a look at the type ahead command, which is the command that you would use if you were going to be prompted to provide the router with some sort of feedback. Okay. So now that I've created my tickle script here, right? And if you're following in the CCNP ROUTev7 curriculum, I think it's in Lab 8.1 where they talk a little bit about the tickle scripts, maybe even earlier, and we're going to add some ping commands in too. So now the question is, how do I get this onto my router? And very important here at the very end of the script, the tickle quit. You do not want to leave yourself in the tickle shell, right, after you run a series of commands. So I'm going to copy this, and let's come over here to router 7, and let's watch what happens. So we're going to get an error the first time we do this, and this is going to kind of lead us into the next discussion, which is, well, how do I organize all of these lab files, right? So I'm going to go ahead now and say paste, and watch what happens. It comes out and it says invalid input detected at, and it gives you the greater than sign there. So typically what happens here is I haven't created, and I want to put TCL quit, right, to get out of the tickle shell. And to get into the tickle shell, it's just TCL sh. And you can see it gives me the tickle shell prompt right there. So we're going to exit, oops, sorry, say tickle quit, TCL quit. All right, so if I were to say show flash, you can see that the directory structure that I wanted to create, and then this is the last thing here. It's very much like Linux/Unix, where I can create a directory structure so that I can really organize where my things are located. So when I type show flash, you'll see that the directory vault that I initially wanted to create up here, and it kind of cut it off right there, it doesn't show it, right? And all of the subdirectories are not there either. So this is kind of one of the steps you have to do, and believe me, it's definitely worth it. If you've got a series of routers, right, you have 3 or 4 routers that you're going to be using to do these labs with, when you take this time up front, it really saves you a lot of time on the back end. So all I need to do to make a directory is, just like with Linux or Unix, is issue the make dir command. So I would say make dir flash : and let's make sure we've got, so we're going to do vault tp-bonfi. So we're going to create a series of directories here. And this is the one drawback. On Linux, you could do this with a -p, and it would create all of the the subdirectories for you. However, here we're going to have to do these one at a time. So I say make dir /vault. It's going to say create the directory vault, and I'll just hit enter. So now when I say show flash, you can see my vault directory is right there. So that now when I go to create the subdirectory, I have to say make dir /vault /tpbonfi, right? TPBONFI. And then it says, do you want to create that? I say yes. So if I say show flash. Now, the thing I like about the show flash, especially when you're looking for files, is you'll notice it shows you the parent directory and the subdirectories. And when we get the file in here, it'll actually show the file. Whereas if I type dir flash, oops, sorry, get the colon at the end. If I type dir flash does not show me the subsequent directories, right? The child directories or the subdirectories that exist there. It only shows me that parent directory. So I always, when I come in, I always like to run the show flash. One, I don't need the colon at the end of flash. And two, it's going to show me all of the directories and the subdirectories. So let's go ahead and complete this out. I'm actually going to go ahead and grab from here. We'll say copy. And so we're going to come in. I'm going to say make dir /vault /tpbonfi / and let's cut and paste here. And I'll pull this back. We'll say, whoops, typo on make dir. All right, so we want to create CCNP, and we do. And I recall the command with the correct spelling, and then say after CCNP, we're looking at ROUTev7, so ROUTev7, and then labs, and then I believe we had chapter 07. Is that correct? Let's take one last look here. Yep, chapter 07 or 07. And then finally /TCL. Now, again, if you're just creating a handful of scripts and you're not going to be using them for all 8 or 9 chapters in all of the labs, this is probably not something that you would want to do. But I organize tons of labs like this, and so this makes it very, very easy for me to go back in and look and see, oh, okay, I know exactly where the labs for chapter 7 are going to be located. So then I can go in there and pull out or run the files that I want to run. So now that we have the directories that are needed, the same directories that we call out here, and this is where we're going to store our file, and the name of the file is going to be called router-test-config.tcl, right? And so let's actually change this here. Let's spice it up a little bit, make it a little more Santa Rosa 02. Let's have it match -lab 7.3 -base -cfg for config. And now it is running off the screen on us there. So let's pull this guy back a little bit, and how about right there? All right, so that gives us everything. So again, we've got a pretty long directory structure here that ultimately is going to lead us to the file that we want to run. So let's go ahead now. Let's try this again, because we're not going to get the error here. And I'm going to say, and actually what I'm going to do is, before we start the comments up there, I'll put the TCL/SH. Let me pull this away here to get us into the tickle shell right away, or else those hash signs are going to wreak havoc on the privilege exec mode. So here we are in privilege exec mode. I'm on my router, and I'm running, this is running 12.4.24 T2, right? So I'm going to go ahead and paste. So I start the TCL, the tickle shell, and you can see it drops everything in here, right? No errors at all. So one of the first questions I typically get asked after we type TCL quit, remember, you want to get out of there, or else the commands you're typing are, you're typing them in the tickle shell. You're not actually typing them from privilege exec. So now when I say show flash, let's take a look and see what we've got. So there you have it. right? It gives us all of the directories that we have all the way down to the actual file. And so we'll stretch this a little bit to the side here. Let me run that again. Keep it all on one screen. And so right here, I can simply see, okay, router SR02-lab73 base config .tcl. And I always put .tcl at the end. When I write my bash shell scripts, I always put .bash at the end. And again, it's just so that I know exactly what language the script is written in. So one of the first questions that students typically ask is, okay, well, I've got the file here, but what if I'm not on the computer where this file resides, right? And I've created this in Sublime Text. How do I see, right? How do I know what I'm going to run? And very convenient. Just like Linux and Unix, you have the more command. So if I put more ? You can see that I can provide a path to look at. So I would say more /:, and then just simply grab the entire absolute path name to the file that I'd like to view. Now you'll notice it shifted over there and we've got this $sign. All that means is that it went longer than the line, than the command line was able to show. But it's all still there. And I'll hit enter. And there we go. And so that's how you view the contents of the Tickle script that you've created. So before you run the script, you could say, you know, it's been a while. I can't remember what I put in this script. Let me make sure that this is correct. I've got my IPs all right. They're properly configured. And so then we take a look here, right? I can see, all right, set up my common router settings. Okay, so there's my line con 0. I set my no exec timeout. Logging synchronous. We're good to go. Configure hostname and interfaces so I can look it over real quick. And then we end it with write memory. All right, well now the question becomes, okay, so here I am, I've got this router, there's no settings on this router at all as evidenced by the router host name, so how do I run the script, right? I want to run this script every time I get onto this router when it doesn't have a config to quickly set it up so that I can go ahead and jump in and do whichever lab I may be working on for practice. And that's very simple. We're just going to paste out the same thing and not write memory. We're going to paste out the path that we just did earlier and we precede it, say copy, and we precede it with TCL sh. Because remember, the script over here, right, when I cut and pasted this in, I had to type tickle shell, TCL sh, to get us into the tickle shell on the router. Once in, these TCL commands, puts as a TCL command, open as a TCL command, all of these commands, right, that I ran to open the file up, place the contents of this into the file, and then quit out of the tickle shell. So I still need to say that I'm going to use the tickle shell, but now I'm going to use it to execute this script, right? So router-SR02 for Santa Rosa 02-lab7.3. And so let's see what happens here with our interfaces. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And you can see that it is writing the command out. Or I'm sorry, it's writing the did a write memory when it was doing its building config, and we're getting some console messages here. So if I were to say show run, there you can go, that serial 010 came up. So there's our loopback address that we had configured in our script. There's serial 000. And there's serial 010. And take a look at that. Our in cap is right. However, it says no IP address. So the in cap is correct. The service module got on there, the time slots, but we missed out on the IP address. So why is that? So the IP was on the first line right here. What's wrong with it? So the command would have created an error, correct? And again, this is intentionally left in here so that we could have some discussion points. So it's what did I leave out here? If you were looking at this address line, what do you see that's missing? So if you look above, hey, absolutely right. So I would need to look over here and say, oh, serial, and this is going to be my 010. My subnet mask should have been a /24, so let's add that in here. right? And so now why do we intentionally leave this off? I'll say File and Save, right? Because I like, and I'm saving this on my my local iMac here, right? So I've just made a change to the script, right? So I realize, hey, I didn't get the IP I wanted here. Something wasn't right with my script. So there's two ways I can look at it. I can pull it up here, or remember, I could simply say show flash and then type in more flash : and actually it assumes it's the flash, right? It assumes flash is the directory, I believe. So let's go ahead and put that in there. And so I could take a look at it right here and I can see, okay, you know what? Hey, I overlooked my subnet mask, my net mask, right? So I'm going to make the fix over here. So how do I get the change out of my text editor back over and into that file and overwrite that file? Well, it's actually very easy. So once I've made my correction, I simply come over here and I grab everything in my file. I type copy, come over here and paste. And so it's going to drop everything in for me, including the IP address of serial 010. And there you go, it kind of pushed it off to the side. So I'll type in TCL quit, and then I can type in TCL sh for the tickle shell, and I should be able to, actually I'm going to have all that in my buffer. Let's grab, where is it at? And we're just going to run this right here. And I'll hit enter. You can see it's building the configuration. We should get some console messages here. Maybe something got configured, so we'll do a show run. And let's make our way down. So the loopback address is still good. Serial 000 is good, and there's 010. Let's take a look at the very end of the file and take a look at that. Our exec timeout and our logging synchronous are already set, right? So this makes it extremely easy. And again, whenever I teach Linux or Cisco networking courses, I always try to start with new learners and even advanced learners with new topics in sort of an inductive fashion where we start small and then we build. So I've just run all those commands. My interfaces are up. The commands have done everything I've asked them to do. So now I'm going to come back over here to this script because I know that it works the way it is right now, and I'm going to build upon what I've done. So let's go ahead and say for interface loopback 0, okay, that looks good, but what about interface serial 000? What if I wanted to add a description? I would simply come in here and say, and again, I love Sublime Text helping me out because it knows exactly what I'm getting ready to type. So I just hit enter and then space and off I go. So interface serial 000, and I'm going to put in a description, right? And you can also abbreviate. You can see above with the address. So I could probably type DESC. And now what do I want my description to say? Well, what is the serial 000 interface on Santa Rosa 02? That is the interface that uplinks to my ISP. So I may want to put a comment in here like description. Uplink to ISP BGP AS, well, space it out, BGP AS 200, and then we want to put in here, this was the metered T1 link, right? So now I've just added a description to the interface. And again, same thing here. If I come down, we'll enter in a line here, and I'll say iOS config space, get my quotes in here, interface serial 010, right? And I'll step over, whoops, and we'll step over here, and we're going to put in a description as well for interface serial 010, which is simply my iBGP peering connection between myself and Santa Rosa 01. So I'll put in here description, iBGP peering link to, and look at that, it put 02, but that's okay. It makes it nice and easy for us to go ahead and just make that change, not having to type everything out. So now I've got a description here under serial 010. So I'm going to save my file, right, because I'm happy with the work I've done so far. I'm going to go ahead and grab my whole script. I'm going to copy it, right? I'm going to come over to the router. I'm already in privilege exec mode, so now it's just a matter of pasting it. And all this does is overwrites the file that was already there and adds in the new commands to the commands I already know they function. So again, and we'll come back here, we'll get the TCL quit. All right, so we're out of TCL. So if I wanted to say more and take a look at that file, let me come back here. Probably should have piped in the, should have run a show flash real quick down at the bottom there. So we'll say copy and paste. All right, so there it is. So I can take a look at it before I run it to make sure, did everything I want get in here? And it did. So now I'm just going to paste the name by itself, but I have to first put TCL/sh, right? So tickle shell, it assumes the flash directory. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And you can see how quickly it does that, right? I mean, it enters all those commands in, and the right memory command, which is why it says building config OK, that runs so quick that these things are getting set up extremely fast. So let's say show run, and there you go. The descriptions are on the interfaces, and the interfaces are configured. Everything looks great. All right, so we're going to make one final change to our TCL script, and this will be sort of the final script that we leave on Santa Rosa 02 to get all of sort of, you know, the basic configuration tasks out of the way, things that I don't really need to focus on practicing, right? Like setting up the T1 clock source internal command and putting an IP address on there. So at the CCNP level, you should be pretty confident that you're going to be able to knock the interface config out from the IP address perspective rather quickly. All right, so now I'm going to hit down here. I want to do a comment, right? So I'm going to say, finally, adding in EIGRP configuration in named mode. All right, so remember, I'm going to have to type in iOS underscore config, because configuring EIGRP, at least the router EIGRP process, is something that I would do from global config mode. Now, here's, and actually, you know what? We are on a router running 12.4, so I'm going to have to go ahead and bite the bullet on this one, and I'll say in classic mode. All right, so we'll do classic mode, so I'm glad I caught that. All right, so from global config, what is the command? Router EIGRP, and then my autonomous system number, so we'll stick with 1. Now, if I'm under the EIGRP configuration mode, what commands do I want to add in here? Well, the first command is going to be no auto summary, especially since we're running the 12.4 code. Then, what other command would I run under the router EIGRP1? Well, I definitely need my network 172.16.0.0 command. And are there any other commands? So just looking at the lab again, the lab's not an EIGRP lab per se, so we're going to go ahead and we'll just leave it the way it is. And then we wrap things up with our write memory command, and it's kind of self-explanatory, but it never hurts to add in additional comments. So I'll just say here, you know, saving my configuration, right? And so we still are under a screen full, and we've actually already created a tickle script that is going to configure completely the base config, everything needed for router 2. So let's go ahead, let's grab this up. So we've got the tickle shell script there. And we're going to say copy. We're going to step over here to our router, which is already in privilege exec mode, and I'm going to say paste. And again, this inductive approach where you start small, you get a group of commands that you know function properly, and then you slowly but surely build upon that configuration. So we've got our base settings, we've got all of our interface settings. We've added in the EIGRP that's going to run on the link between the two routers. And so we're ready to go. And we've saved that config off. So I'll say TCL quit. And now I'm going to do the show flash command. So there you go. We still have the same directory structure. So what I'm going to say right now is TCL-SH, and we're going to cut and paste this script. So we'll say copy and paste. I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to run the script, overwrite everything that I'd put, the initial settings that we had set, right? And so let's do a quick check here. So I'm going to say show run. There's the host name has been set. Loopback is set. Serial 000 is up with a description. 010's got a description in there. And take a look at that. We now have our EIGRP information with our network statement and the no auto summary command. So again, if I was transitioning from lab to lab, this is going to save me a ton of time. And not only does it save me a ton of time, I already know that this configuration is correct. So it allows me to go ahead, jump right into the IBGP configuration piece, and then get into the eBGP configs and to continue on. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at one last thing, right? At least on Santa Rosa 02 for right now, before we do the configs for the ISP router and Santa Rosa 01. And so the first thing we're going to look at is I'm going to reload the router. Remember, we wrote the config out, and flash is non-volatile. So what the tickle script I save, that's going to sit on that router until I go in there and remove it, right? So we're going to go ahead and reboot router 7. Let me check here on router 6. It looks like it's still configured. So we're going to come over here and say, or actually, what we're going to do is, what I wanted to do was, we're going to use another script I'm going to show you to basically go ahead and wipe the config and reload your router for you. All right, so this is Santa Rosa 02. Let's take a look at a script that I like to call the router config windex.tcl. And for those of you not familiar with Windex, it's used to clean things or wipe things clean. And so that's why I use that little word in there, Windex, right? And so again, and let me drop the tickle shell up here, get this in the right order. So again, this is just going to wipe the config of the router. So we're going to create it, right? We're going to save the we're going to do a write memory first, and now we're also going to get to take a look at the command type ahead. So what is type ahead? Well, type ahead can be used if I want to tell the command that follows type ahead that this is going to be your input. Because when you type write erase, what does it ask you? And we just saw it over here, so I'll do it here. So if I type write erase, and this is going to blow away the config on this router, and I hit enter, you can see that it's going to prompt me, and rightfully so, right? It wants to check to make sure, is this what you really want to do? Because this could turn out to be a resume generating event. So I'm going to hit Control-C to back out of there, right? It says the erase was not confirmed or could not be completed. But the key here is it prompted me for something. So I issue the type ahead, and what do I want type ahead to put out after write erase does the prompt? Yes, or Y for yes. And then the write erase command is going to take that input as if someone had entered it in from the keyboard. And then I'm going to put out a statement that says reloading the router in 1 minute, type reload cancel to stop this action. And again, here's that type ahead command. Because I type in reload in 1 reason, and I give a reason. And we'll take a look at this command as well. So again, we want to get this script onto the router. And so I'm going to shorten this up here. And we'll just simply call it router-config-windex. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it, just like I did with the other script. We're going to come over to Santa Rosa 01, and I'm going to go ahead and say right-click, paste, and there you go. It's dropped in the entire script, and it's created that file. If I say show flash, all right, there it is right there, router-config-windex.tcl. So how do we run the file? Tickle shell and the name of the file. We'll say copy and paste. I'm going to hit enter. You can see it's doing its write mem, and we're also going to catch the Y. So there's the Y on the far right hand side, and take a look at that. Erase of MV RAM complete, now reloading the router in 1 minute, and we get the reason, right? And as you can see, we're still up. So if I were to say more and paste it in, because remember I told it to reload in 1 minute, so there's the script. And remember that the command, when I type in reload in question mark, you can see you've got options. So I say reload in, and then it says delay before. So I put 1, and then I put in the reason, right? And then I entered my reason in. So I've pretty much got 60 seconds before this router is going to go down on its own. Now if I type reload cancel, I'll say reload cancel, see if we get that in there quick enough. That canceled the shutdown, right? But we want this router to be wiped clean because we're going to create another tickle shell script just to drop on here. So if I want to run that tickle shell script, I just type in flash, the name of the script, oh I'm sorry, TCLSH, and then the name of the script, and there it goes. And so this is going to, again, save the configuration. There's my Y, right? It gives the OK real quick, but there's our Y. So it's automatically going to reload in 1 minute. So we're going to come back after we take a look here at router 7. You can see that it was 157 seconds. And take a look at that. The config looks like it's been saved. So we'll do a quick show run over here. So there we go. The host name is good. Our loopback setting is good because we did the write memory command. And more importantly, if I say show flash, take a look at that. And conveniently, it's now kind of ordered it for me, right, in terms of vault and then TP-Bonfy, and it kind of comes down as a pyramid, so it makes it nice and convenient to take a look at it and get a good clean read. So as you can see here, if I wanted to jump back in and practice my local pref, med, default originate commands, and to get some BGP action in, this is exactly how I would pre-stage that config and have everything ready to go. Well, you know what I want to do is I want to put this script on there as well, because in between labs, I want to be able to run this script on my routers, take a break, go get something to drink, come back, and everything is ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and say paste. And there we go. So we've got some invalid, it may be the reload in 1 command. Let me see, TCL quit. So if I say reload in 1 reason, reload in 1 reason. Let me see if that was where the mistake is at. I'm looking for the uppercase. What did I do wrong there? Let me see here. Write erase, puts now. Type ahead should be good. Oh, the reason command, sorry. So on the 15 code, and this is something with 15 code, let's take a look at router 6. Well, look at that. It's reloading auto-magically for us right now. So router 4 is also running the 15 code. So there's a minor difference in the 15 code. So I'll do a show version. And you can see here I've got the 15.3 code on this router. So when I say reload on a 15.3 code router, reload in 1, it wants you to actually type in reason and then you put the reason in. On the 12.4 code, it says reload in 1, and when I do question mark, it doesn't want me to put reason. It just says, you know, list the reason out. So here's what we're going to do. Again, we'll just modify this. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take this. I'm going to copy it. And what are we going to say here? This will be script for 12.4 code and earlier. And now we'll drop it in again. And I'm just going to simply take out the word reason, right? And when you're adding commands in, if you're uncertain as to what the syntax of the command is, just jump over to the router, type the command out, and get it to work there, and then you just need to bring it back in here. And again, remember, with the previous file, right, you'll notice none of these commands are from global config. So none of them are preceded with the iOS_config. Whereas when we were doing the host name and the loopback addresses and the serial interfaces, everything had to be preceded with the iOS_config. But if it's a command that you're doing from privilege exec mode, you can just throw the command in there. All right, so we've got our Windex script here for routers that are running 12.4 code and earlier. So let's step back over to Santa Rosa 02, which is our router 7, and now let's paste that guy in there again. And it didn't like, now reloading router in 1 minute, or write erase. Let me see what it didn't like here. So the 12.4 code is giving us a little kickback on type ahead Y, write memory, write erase. Let's see here. Write memory, type ahead, write erase. It should take that. Let's do this. I'm going to shorten this here. And I was messing around with another router that didn't like the length of that didn't like the length of the text that was there. So let's see if that's it with the puts command. So we're going to say copy, come back over here, TCL quit. All right, let's paste it in here, and it may not like that puts command at all. And did we not put... It looks like it might not like those. So let's get rid of the comments here. The 15 code. Ah, I apologize. I see what it didn't like. We had the tickle command in there twice. All right, so if you were screaming, you've got the tickle command in there twice, you were right. So let's come back over here and let's get this in. TCL quit. Let's drop it in again. And there we go. No error. So yeah, I didn't even catch that. We had the tickle shell command in there twice. So we'll say TCL quit. I'll say show flash. And you can see here's our file right at the top of the directory structure. And then here's the router config. So now let's go ahead, take a look back over here on router 6. You can see clearly that router 6 was completely wiped clean by that script and reloaded, and all with simply cutting and pasting that single command with the tickle shell preceding it. Basically started that whole process. So let's get this going here. It could take a couple seconds. So while that's doing its thing, I'm going to come over to router 4 because we're also going to clean up router 4. So I'm going to go ahead and say for the 15 code, right, I want to grab this one here, and we'll simply paste this guy in. And there you go. And this is 15 code, so we have no error messages or anything like that. And it's okay. It likes that reason with the reload in 1 and then the reason. So we're good to go here. So if I were to say show flash, there's my script. So tickle shell, and then let's run this script. It's saving my configuration off, and I put my Y at the end there, so now it's going to blow it away, and it's reloading in 1 minute, right? So let's come back over here to router 6, and as you can see right now, router 6 has no config at all. So let's scroll back up. Router 6 is Santa Rosa 01. And so let's take a look here. I'm going to slide this way just a bit. We'll come back a little bit here. So let's come back over here to this command that we did here, to this script that we did here. So remember, I'm saving this file as lab7-3 base config. So I'm going to say copy, file, new file. I'm going to paste this in here, and now all I need to do are change the values right? We'll come down here, and this is going to be Santa Rosa 01, so new file name. And take a look at all of the work, the legwork is already done here. I'm just coming in now and adjusting this for the Santa Rosa 01 config. So what's the loopback address? Well, it should be 64.1. Same subnet mask, right? So I can move on. Interface serial 000 is 1.6, same /30. And that is my uplink to BGP AS200, except we're going to say unmetered T1 link. Serial 001, I'm just simply 172.16.1.1, and that's my BGP peering over to Santa Rosa 02. And again, the same service module commands and the same EIGRP configuration. So literally, in about 30 seconds, I have, in effect, done all of the base configuration work that's needed for Santa Rosa 01. So let's go ahead, let's grab all this. We're going to say copy. We're going to come over here to Santa Rosa 01. And actually, in order to save a little time so that I'm not creating the directory structure, so we've already done the directory structure on Santa Rosa 02, we'll make it a little easier here. So we'll just dump it at the top level of the hierarchy. Copy. I jump onto Santa Rosa 01 and say paste. And again, yeah, it takes a little time right now, but this is going to save me a ton of time going forward. Allows me to automate things. Okay, so there we go. So if I say show flash, where's my tickle script? There it is right there, router SR01. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. I'm going to simply say flash, whoops, flash space, and the name of the tickle script. I'm going to hit enter. I apologize, I keep saying flash. Tickle shell and the name of the script. And hit enter. And there you go. And take a look at how quickly it did all that configuration. And what we should see here is we should see the, if I'm not mistaken, the EIGRP adjacency should come up. There we go. The interface is up. And look at that. There's my EIGRP adjacency. So I've literally just automated everything that we've had to do for the base config. And all I did was cut and paste the script. It was really, really quick. So if I'm doing router 2, right, if I'm doing Santa Rosa 02 last, if I'm doing these in order, what are some of the things that I would want to check? Well, I would want to check connectivity, yeah? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop back over here to Santa Rosa 02. And once all of this is done, and we've done the EIGRP configuration work, I'm going to go ahead and say testing connectivity, right? Again, start small and then build. What are the things that I want to check? So the ping command, you can do the ping command right from privilege exec, right? So I'm going to ping 172.16.1.1. That's my IBGP peer. I'm also going to go ahead and ping the service provider 192.168.1.1, right? And let's ping the loop back on router Santa Rosa 01, which is going to be 172.16.32. Was it 32.1 or 64.1? Sorry about that. So 64.1. So when I run this script, again, assuming that I do ISP first, and then I do Santa Rosa 01, and then Santa Rosa 02, I would want to go ahead and check out my connectivity. So let's save our file. So I'm simply going to say file save. I'm going to grab up the TCL script here, copy. Let's come over to Santa Rosa 02, and I'm just going to replace the script that is currently in there with my new script that's got some ping commands in it. And in fact, let me do this, I apologize. Let's say repeat 10. All right, let's grab this up here. And as you can see, the process is very straightforward from creating the script, TCL quit, and paste. The process is very straightforward, and like I said, a little work up front, a little time up front, but once you get the scripts configured, you can then just reuse the majority of your code and then simply go in and just knock the interfaces out that you want to get knocked out. So there we go. So now I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to say show flash. And we're going to go ahead and run our tickle config script with the tickle shell, not the flash shell. All right, so there we go. I'm going to hit enter. And you can see it ran everything. Connectivity is there, and it's building the config. So had I done this one last, it's going to show me all my config information, or I'm going to show me all my connectivity is actually functional. All right, so now let's go ahead and wrap this up. Let's take a look at ISP1. Remember, there we go. We ran the script. It automatically did the reboot for us. So while it's coming around here, how do you think we're going to go ahead and create that script? Well, if you guessed that we're going to go ahead and let me save this as. So I'm going to save off the Santa Rosa 01 script here. It's kind of taking its time. But again, if you were guessing, I'm just going to cut and paste what we have here and customize it for the ISP. You're absolutely right. So we'll just call this router Santa Rosa 01. Save off my config there. And so we're going to grab this one here because it's got the ping commands, which I'm going to reuse. So I'm going to say copy. We're going to go file, new file. We're going to paste that file in. I'll pull this out here to save us a little time. That way I don't have to create the directory structure. But again, highly recommended you organize things. So which router is this? This is ISP. All right, and so we're going to say router ISP lab 7-3. There's the puts and open tickle commands that are going to create that file for me or open the file for writing. And then there we go, the common config settings, the host name. So let me change my host name here to ISP. My loopback address, let me go ahead and change that, is 192.168.100.1. It is a /24. The serial 000 interface is going to be .5. And we can go ahead and pull out, or actually we'll leave this in here. We'll just change the comment. So description, downlink to router, and let me take a look at the drawing here real quick. So serial 000 goes to Santa Rosa 01. And you can look at that, fills it in, so I don't even have to type the whole thing in there. Santa Rosa 01. All right. So then I'm going to take a look at, let's see, at one of the clock rate. We don't actually need to set the clock rate. And then let's go to serial, and what was the serial interface? Serial 010 still, so 010. And the IP address over here is going to be 192.168.1.1/24. We'll leave, and we don't need the service module commands in here because it's actually a V35 HWIC1T, not the CSU with the built-in DSU on there. And the description is going to be, we'll say 02. Right, and we'll change this here. So downlink to router Santa Rosa 02. I don't need the time slots, but we do need the end cap. And you'll notice this is another great thing about Sublime Text. So I'm missing my quotations. See what happens when I take them away? So it lights things up so that you know that you're missing some syntax. And then we'll leave the end cap PPP no shut. I'm pretty sure we're doing PPP all around there. Okay, so the EIGRP, I don't need this piece, so let's pull this out of here. All right, and then what do we want to do? Well, let's test some connectivity. I'm going to want to test over to 192. 192.168.1.2 and 192.168.1.6, and that's going to tell me I've got connectivity on both of my serial links over to routers 1 and 2. And I'm going to actually pull this up here, and we're going to put this here. And my thinking is it's going to give us a little more time, hopefully, for those interfaces to transition to an up status. All right, so there we go. So there's the tickle script for the ISP router and all of its default settings. So let's grab this tickle script here. We're going to say copy. I'm going to walk over here to the ISP router, go into privilege exec mode, and then just simply paste. And there it is. TCL quit. So now if I do a show flash, where's my script at? There it is. If I wanted to see my script, I would say just more. Copy and paste. All right, so I get to take a look at it, and I decide, you know what? Yep, this looks great. Let's rock with it. TCL shell, the name of my script, and it's doing the write array. I'm sorry, the write memory command, not write erase. And so the reason I do the 10 is to give it time to hopefully have that interface come up before it fails out on me. And it looks like it might not be cooperating here. All right, so it got the Santa Rosa 01 ping in there. Let's rerun this. And let's see what happens here. So there's all the configuration work. So Santa Rosa 01, and you know, I'm not sure if I did incap PPP show run int serial 000. And that's exactly what I left out. So let's come back over here to the Santa Rosa 01 tickle script. And I did do, oh, that was the problem. I did not need service module T1 on Santa Rosa 0, or actually I did. Give me a second there. How do we undo? So just the Z, so we'll do, so we'll leave that. The serial 000 link is where, right here, yep. So what I wanted to say was incap PPP, right? And what are we missing? You see everything lit up white, right? Need those close quotes. So again, it's really quick. All I need to do is grab my script, copy it, and this is on Santa Rosa 01. I'm going to dump my script in. Right, the tickle shell tells it which file to open up, what to create. TCL quit, show flash, and I want to rerun this script, right? So I'm going to say tickle shell, and then my base config script. Now, I could have simply run, you know, gone into global config, gone into interface config mode, and dumped in the incap PPP. However, I'm going to be reusing these scripts, right? So I want to make sure that these scripts are going to work for me, and they're going to set everything up right the first time. So we'll come back over here. Let's do this again. Let's see what happens. See if our ping works now. So the ping is still kind of hanging up here. All right, let's make sure that I did incap PPP on not just the router 1 side, but the ISP. And where's my ISP at? So right now we're in this state here, and that is exactly the problem. And in fact, now it has me wondering, incap PPP, so it should have, and we may have to be stepping over to the router here in a second. So let's jump back here. So again, none of the pings are working between the ISP and the directly connected links. So let me take a look here real quick. Let's do a show run int serial 000. So the incap is PPP and it's .6. Let's take a look at the ISP's link. So show int serial 000, 000. And we want to say show run int serial 000. And it did not take the incap PPP command on the serial 000 interface. So let's make sure the script that we ran on the ISP router has the right syntax in there. And let me look at the diagram here. So 0, 0, 0 definitely comes down to router Santa Rosa 01, and 0, 1, 0 definitely comes down to Santa Rosa 02. So we'll do a tickle quit, and then we'll say tickle shell, and we'll run the script here real quick. I want to make sure that we get that that configuration gets put on there, and that may be what it was. So serial 000, the state changed to up. Let's see if we get some connectivity here. And I'm going to router Santa Rosa 02. All right, so 01 works, 02 doesn't. So let's say show run int serial 010. And we've got the incap PPP on there. We added in a bunch of clock and source commands that we do need. I'm sorry. Show run int serial 000, and we are missing the incap PPP on Santa Rosa 02, and there it is. So let's add that in. And this was not a mistake that was put in there on purpose, but we've got it sorted out now. Let's scroll back up here. We're going to grab everything. We're on Santa Rosa 02. We're just going to paste it in, and you can see how quick it is to change your script, right? Make an update, change the script, runs the tickle quit command for me. So now I just simply say tickle shell. Well, actually for here, we're going to say show flash because we need that absolute path name. Tickle shell. And let me go ahead and grab and hit enter. All right, so take a look there, and the 1.1, we added the command, so it should change to up, and we should see our exclamation marks. And again, we've got the repeat 10, so hopefully it's going to catch up here. And it looked good. Let's do it one more time. Let's make sure that everything's working. So I'm still trying to ping 192.168.1.1, which is the serial 010 interface over here. So let's say show run int serial 010, and the incap is set. Does anybody see the problem? Massive typo in there. So on the ISP router, how did it get changed to 158? It should be 168. And so yes, that is definitely going to mean that the ping command is not going to work. So on the ISP router, again, we change our script. Look at that. Cut and paste. We're done. Show flash. I'm going to rerun my script, tickle shell. Let's grab that script. Copy and paste. There we go. And now this ping should succeed now that we've got the correct IP on here. Unless we've got something else going on. 192.168.1.1 is my IP. 1.2 is the neighbor. So it looks like we've got something going on here between Santa Rosa 02. So let's say show run interface serial 010. So the incap and the address came out as 158 again. Why is that? Because 158 is no longer in here. All right, let's grab this one last time. I'm going to say copy. Come over here to the ISP router. Serial 010. IP address 192.168.1. It is a /30, not a /24. So it's 192.168.1.1. That is why it won't ping. However, I'm a little more concerned that it keeps putting in the wrong IP. So let's paste this back in. Make sure there are no errors in there. I didn't receive any error messages, so we should be good. So I'm going to go ahead and say show flash. I want to look at the file first because I want to see what is in that file. So I'm going to say more, router ISP lab 3, and copy and paste. And let's see if it's 158 or 168. All right, it is definitely 168. So let's run this script now. Tickle shell, and then our script. All right, now that's how it should look. I'm not sure, because we did make the change, but again, not sure why it left it at 158. However, you can see here, it's working like a champ now. So again, the TCL shell is a fantastic programming language, right? And this is how you can really automate the building of Cisco routers, and I've used this on 3750X switches. So check your iOS to see if it's supported, but this is a fantastic way to not only automate tasks, but when I deploy routers and switches, I make sure that I have a tickle script that will wipe the router clean, that will rebuild the entire router from scratch with the deployed config. And that way, if anything goes wrong, we can quickly get the router back to a well-known state, right? Okay, well, this has been a tutorial on the tickle shell, and hopefully this has kind of inspired you to maybe dig in and take a look at the tickle shell, write some tickle shell scripts. Let me pull this a little more to the side here so we can see everything that's on there, right to there. And so again, this was the O2 router, right? And remember, we started small. This was the lab router, or the ISP router, so I would say save as, and we'll call it ISP, right? So this is my ISP. In fact, we'll move the ISP over here first, then if we did number 2, and then Santa Rosa O2. And then here is the 15 dot, we'll put in here for iOS 15.x and above. To wipe the config, here's the 12.4 code to wipe the config. And again, very simple scripts, very easy to take these, modify them, make them your own, and have some fun with them. All right, well, I appreciate you for watching. I know your time is very valuable, and hopefully this has added some value to your studies as a Cisco networking engineer. All right, thanks for watching, and have a great weekend.